All right, we're now joined by a repeat. I almost said offender. That came out wrong. Good start. No, repeat guest here, Chris Phillips, the Bearded Tomato from the Spurs Up Show. Now, so before you get in, and because you're not going to do it on here, so I'm going to brag on you for you. But it's been awesome watching just all the not only the content and you trying to get another coach fired on the baseball field this time, but all the merch, all the branding and stuff like that, and all the growth. So it's been really fun to watch. If you guys have not checked it out, definitely do so. But at a time when South Carolina athletics, like as a whole, right, as a whole, are really feeling like they're trending up. It has a big Arkansas of 2021 vibe to it, in my opinion, which is like football is kind of like, at least we don't have fucking what's his name, Chad Morris, and starting to do better there. Then you talk about going into like baseball season and basketball season. USC coming off a national championship, the students actually participating in the celebration for the national championship. You guys got just a dog and a goat in Don Staley. What's the mood in Columbia? Since I didn't make it home for Easter for one, but tell me what's the mood in Columbia is like right now for Gamecock athletics.
Well, Marler, first things first, man, I appreciate you having me on. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And again, thank you for the kind words with everything. It's been awesome to watch you grow and on your journey as well.
But I've lost weight, dude.
Grow social media sense, not physically. I know Feinbaum gave you some crap for that, by the way. So
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not gonna be that guy. But no, I mean, I'll tell you, I talked about this on the show earlier this week in regards to talking spring game and all that. And it's so funny. The mood around Columbia, speaking specifically to football, because obviously when football is going well, everything is better. And being out at the tailgates, of course, we had the night spring games. So it was a full day of tailgating, and just being at the tailgates and getting a sense of the temperature of the fan base and sort of gauging the conversations with everyone. In years past, when you talk to Gamecock fans about South Carolina football and the upcoming season and all that, you almost felt like this sense of like angst and dread. It was like, oh, well, we'll just kind of see what happens. And you're like, Gamecock fans, We're eternal optimists, right? Because you have to be, because if you weren't, you would just drive yourself insane.
Without doubt.
Being out there on Saturday, being at Willie B in the game, and just the mood around Gamecock Nation, I actually really feel like there's a true sense of joy, happiness, hope, optimism. And I don't think it's unrealistic in a sense. People think you're too ashamed, Beamer, we're going to go win 12 games or win the SEC East or whatever. But there really feels like a genuine hope and optimism now for the future of the program. And obviously, when you look at what Shane Beamer's done and, the positivity he injected from the jump, and of course, they overachieved in year one and they capped it off, winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl. And I've told everybody, Marler, just kind of joking that, when you win your last game, it doesn't matter if it's the national championship or it's the Duke's Mayo Bowl. When you win your last game, the mood around your program is going to be so much better than it would be otherwise. Obviously, if South Carolina would have lost to UNC, I feel like the total mood and the conversation we're having is different. But the fact of the matter is you did. And then you do what you did in the transfer portal. We talked before, adding Spencer Rattler and all these other playmakers. And, you cap it off with a really fun night at Willie B in the spring game. And again, you got to see your first glimpse of the 2022 Gamecocks and Spencer Rattler actually in uniform, and other guys like Antoine Wells and Christian Beale Smith, Terrell Dawkins, et cetera, et cetera. So I would say the mood is really, really good. Again, I think fans really do have a real sense of hope and optimism. And again, it's just a testament to what Shane Beamer and company have done. They've really changed the culture and the energy as a whole. And that was the thing that impressed me the most last offseason and last season in general, is that, through the ups, the downs, I felt like that positivity, they remained consistent with that, because as we all know, it gets really, really tough. When you get punched in the mouth in the SEC and you start losing games, everybody's 0-0 in the offseason. And, you take on an Arkansas or a Georgia week 2, week 3, and you get hit in the face. It's like, can you be positive then? It's easy to be positive in the offseason. But they've done a great job of doing that. Like I said, when you add the pieces they have, I think South Carolina is a program that has as much momentum, as any around college football going into the offseason, and then this fall as well.
Yeah, well, one thing I want to point out, you said, I think, and I don't think I'll take it out of context. You said national championships, it doesn't matter. So I completely agree with that. Just want to say first and foremost. No, I think that the thing you brought up, like, it's a really, really good point about like the optimism from Beamer. And I've gotten just, a lot of shit from fans before where I've said, like, I've always said, like, Mississippi State to South Carolina to the East. They're seemingly 8-4, 7-5 every season, right? And it seems like that kind of is the case from a football standpoint. But a lot of times, I've never got so much pushback from that, because it's like, well, what should fans expect? Like, you don't want to be delusional, but you want to have like realistic expectations. But that's not like what fans do, right? Like, that's not the fun part of being a fan. Like, you want to think you have a chance to win it every single year going into the season, at least, right? And you look at a program, because I remember somebody saying this to me at Mississippi State. And I was like, that's a really good point. Like, you shouldn't just go into like, I can't wait to go 7-5. We're going to the Independence Bowl in Shreveport. But like you look at a program like South Carolina, and I've heard this from Georgia fans especially, and everyone has that other fan base they hate, right? Whether it's like Georgia fans on Twitter or Vol Twitter, or like Arkansas fans at games, or what, like Vanity Whistler, all that kind of stuff. I've heard this specifically about how delusional Carolina fans are about where their program is, like the athletic department in general. And then you take a step back, you're like, man, within the last decade, you're talking about a Final Four run in basketball, talking about like multiple national championships in baseball. And you talk about, 3-11 win seasons, that which is a little bit more dated, but I think the expectations of having something exciting to build off of is really good from Beamer. One word you said, and I want to get into this, that you said he overachieved in year one. And I'm cautious on year two in terms of, I love what he was able to get with Spencer Rattler. I think that's just a big thing for the program. I wonder if that is going to end up being like something that's huge to build on for the program, or if it's just a sign of where the program can be. And it's like a feel good story because, you look at it and Spencer Rattler is as talented as they come at quarterback, like number one overall quarterback in the country coming out of high school. He was the projected number one pick in the draft last year, right? Going into the season. I wonder what that looks like when he's not in Norman. He's not going to be playing Big 12 defenses. And from like just before you even get into the skill position part, so we're going to talk about that separately. Protecting that kid, the offensive line, he had 11 4-stars or better in Norman. He's got one, in South Carolina, and you saw it this weekend. And this is what I want to ask you. Like, you saw this weekend, that kid. I said it beforehand. He is very, very good at being accurate with the football. 70+ completion percentage in all 5 starts last year. I think he finished his career in Norman like in 11 of 16 starts, over 70%. But when you get him out on the run, sometimes he's not as accurate, right? Like, is that offensive line going to be improved this year? And what do you think that the key is for his success going into year one?
Well, I think
long-winded question ever. So you're welcome.
No, yeah, I think certainly. I mean, one of the massive keys this season, and I talked about again on our show on Monday that, my greatest question marks surrounding this football team now going into the offseason, the summer, SEC media days, fall camp, and then of course the season. I mean, it has to be the offensive line because you look at the offense, you upgraded at basically every single position: quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end. I mean, you added quality players and you return your top 8 offensive linemen, but they didn't always, and most of the time, did not play good football for you last year. I mean, it was a complete mess. Now, I think having stability under center with Spencer Rattler, I think that's going to help you in regards to just the overall way that the offensive line gels and how they play. But they've got to step up bottom line. And I think that's where South Carolina, and I think South Carolina fans do need to realize that, fans just see these additions and think that South Carolina is going to automatically challenge the Georgias, the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the A&Ms. I still think the biggest difference between South Carolina and those schools is on the line of scrimmage, because as much as football changes and the spread offenses and the way offenses change or how much the game changes, the bottom line is this, Chris Marler, is that if you can move the man in front of you out of the way and you can do it consistently, you're going to have your way with the opponent. And that's what the Georgias and the Bamas, that's what they do. You look at them in the trenches, they're just built different. Now, with that being said, I mean, everybody's excited for Spencer Rattler, and as you should be. I mean, you saw in the spring game, they really didn't open things up. He didn't go down the field, but the couple of throws that he had, he had one to Xavier Legette that was about 15 or 20 yards down the field. And the big thing with him is it's just so effortless. I mean, you can see. It's just effortless. You can see the arm strength, man. He's just a natural thrower of the football. He had one also to Antoine Wells on the sideline that was like a tiptoe catch. And, I don't want to look too deep into it because, again, it is a spring game. It's a glorified scrimmage. But you could see the arm talent. I mean, you could just see that where he's got a guy in his face and he literally just flicks this ball over there. And it's right on the money. And it's like the guys in the past just could not make that throw. Now, going back more to something you said in regards to the expectations, expectations and hype are a great thing. I saw Pro Football Focus, and whether think their rankings are BS or not, one of their guys had South Carolina ranked like 15th in the preseason.
Okay,
I just make the point of this: that do I think that's a little high? Yes, I do. But and I'm someone that doing what I do, I feel like it's almost my responsibility to be realistic and inject perspective, if you will, because I agree with you. The scary thing about you went 6-6 in the regular season, 7-6 in year one, is that you fall into this trap of, well, we won X in year one, so we should win Y in year two. And that's just not the way it goes, because personnel changes, schedules change, coaching staff changes, everything changes. So you can't say because you won this many in year one, you got to win this many in year two. Now, I understand why you feel like, hey, you add all the players you did, you should win more than 6 games in the regular season. But I will say, having those expectations, having hype, it's a good thing. You know what I mean? It's a good thing. I mean, I felt for so many years in the Muschamp era going into seasons just dreading it. I mean, really, it felt like every conversation around South Carolina football was negative. So you know what? This is a fan base that, again, we talked about when Chamberlain was hired. This fan base needed a hug of sorts, if you will. And I feel like he's been able to give them that both on and off the field. And so, again, having that hype, having expectations, and again, you add a Spencer Rattler. I mean, if you want to know just where the hype meter is within the fan base, Chris, I don't know if you saw this on social media, but a couple of weeks ago, I posed a hypothetical. I mean, again, it's just talking season, right? Like we're so far at peak off-season talk. I posed the hypothetical. Hey, option one, I will give you 8-4 right now for the 2022 season. Sign the dotted line. You can have it. I'm not going to tell you which games you win or lose, but 8-4 is guaranteed. Or option number two, you can just roll the dice. You might win more, you might win less, but it's a complete roll the dice. The amount of people that would not take the 8-4 Marler was staggering. It was staggering. It was, and because I'm someone right now, I'll tell you, I'll sign up for an 8-4 season in year two in a heartbeat. That's a really fun year. You beat some really, really good teams. I'm not trying to put a cap or limit what South Carolina football can do under Shane Beamer in year two, but you also have to be realistic in the sense of South Carolina was very fortunate to be a 6-6 team last year in the regular season. And even with the addition of Spencer Rattler and others offensively, and 8-4 would be a great year in year two. I think most would all agree with that. But either way, to have that hype and have that hope and have that optimism, it's nothing but a plus, nothing but a positive. I'd rather be talking people, down off of thinking we're going to win 9, 10, 11 games than trying to get people excited for the upcoming season. That's exhausting, man.
Yard barker out there trying to get all that kind of stuff going. Also, there's no better example of, and I mean this in the most positive way. There's no better example between the constant, what's the best way to put it? Headbutting that you sometimes have with your audience and fan base in terms of man, he's being too critical. It's no, he's just being he's trying to manage expectations and be as realistic and objective as possible. And so the 8-4 thing, it cracks me up because it's it reminds me. Have you seen The Other Guys? The movie The Other Guys?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, maybe it was a Step Brothers. Either way, this is a Will Ferrell quote, and he's like, "I'm gonna do the responsible thing, and I'm gonna get a job at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, and because they give you the tools to be your own boss." That's the 8-4 season in a nutshell. I think going into year two, the thing you brought up, I think the influx of talent he has, the skill position is what I was happy to see with the recruiting standpoint, right? Because you look at, I did a deep dive on roster talent and stuff like that, according to 24/7 Sports, and sometimes that stuff doesn't matter. You know what I mean? People say stars don't matter. I think it's hilarious that a lot of Florida fans are really big on that, especially when they had Mullen. And I didn't realize they had the fourth best talent or fourth most talent on their roster of any team in the country. So it's very awkward and ironic they would say that. You guys bring in a top 25 class last year. I think they were 14th in the SEC 2 years removed from that because that was when Muschamp left and left, the cover was kind of bare. But, in Oklahoma, you have 5 stars at receiver. You got 4-star running backs and so much expectations and the high flying offense. Year two of Satterfield, having a guy like Josh Vann, just from the receiving standpoint, Nick Mutz is our boy. We'll love him forever. It's just, the sass pose lives in my head rent free every day. But moving forward, I think this is a much more talented team in terms of the skill positions. And I'm talking just receiver at tight end because we're going to get to Marshawn Lloyd in a minute. What do you expect from them, and what do you expect that year two of Satterfield to look like going into the season?
Well, Chris, I do agree with you. It's a much more talented unit than it was a year ago. I look back to last year at the wide receiver position. I argued it was the worst position group on the entire football team. Now, I still think you need to continue to add pieces, and it's not quite to an elite level yet. But you add Antoine Wells, which was basically the top wide receiver in all of FCS last year. He set records at James Madison, caught 15 touchdowns. And again, the question marks will be around him going from that level to SEC. But again, it wasn't just some guy who played every now and then at FCS. This was a legitimate dude. Seeing him on the field Saturday night, I think he's going to be a huge piece of the offense, 1A, 1B with Van and Antoine Wells and somebody they're going to want to get the football in his hands a lot. You add in Corey Rucker from Arkansas State. They really attack the portal, which, you love to see. Again, that coach in the upstate, he doesn't seem to want to do that. So we'll gladly take all those.
We got to talk about that guys. Too.
Yeah. We'll gladly take all those talented guys. I think Shane Beamer's ahead of the game. But no, either way, you bring DeCarrion Joyner back after his great bowl game. Hopefully they can get the ball in his hands and use him in some type of way.
We've been saying that every offseason since.
Yeah, we have, but now you've seen at least a flash, and maybe now he can carry that confidence over. Either way, they got to find a way to use him and get creative in regards to the offense. Jaheem Bell is obviously going to be the major talking point going into the season, and I think you really started to see him come into his own late in the season last year, and obviously again what he did in that Duke's Mayo Bowl, and really excited. I think he's sort of they actually label him as like Deebo Samuel 2.0. They've made the wide back position for him, if you will. So again, he's going to be a guy that needs to touch it a lot. Then you add Austin Stogner from Oklahoma. So again, like we mentioned earlier, I mean, you've upgraded at every single position. And I think this too, Marler, is something you got to factor in. Spencer Rattler is going to make all those guys I just mentioned better. Bottom line. I mean, did we really see the best of the wide receiver room last year? Hey, Xavier Legette's another one that I didn't mention that had a pretty good spring game. And I think is somebody that sort of had this untapped potential. But just how good is the wide receiver room? We're really going to find out this year because, like I said, now they finally got a quarterback to get in the football, and that's no disrespect to Colonel Zeb or Luke Doty, who we just had on the show, who I really like, and Jason Brown, obviously, but they're not Spencer Rattler. There's no reason you brought the guy in. So I think you're kind of banking too that he's going to make everyone around him better due to his ability. You saw some of the scrambling ability on Saturday as well. And while he's not a Dak Joyner or Luke Doty mobile-esque, I think he has enough wiggle to get outside the pocket and again, make those throws in the run. He actually talked about that's something he's worked on a ton in regards to his lower half and making plays with his legs. So I think you're banking a lot of that in the passing game, that just his ability is going to make all the receivers around him better. But certainly, again, they did their due diligence to upgrade at that position. Again, I think Josh Vann is going to come back and be a good player, somebody who's not being talked about a lot because you have all the other additions, but he was really, really good for you last year. And again, I think Wells, I think Corey Rucker, I think Jaheem Bell, I think Stogner, how they use the running back position, Juju Mcdowell. I mean, Juju Mcdowell averaged 9.5 yards per touch in the spring game. And again, I know it's a spring game, but you saw that last year.
Your defense sucks, dude.
Yeah, probably so. But every time he touches the ball, it seems like he's going for 10 yards or so. And then again, I know you want to get into Marshawn Lloyd, and he flashed looking like he's getting closer and closer to being that dude we heard about on the recruiting trail. And God, then you added like 17 running backs out of the transfer portal with Lavassier Carroll from Georgia, Christian Beale Smith from Wake Forest, DJ Twitty from East Tennessee State. So again, they attack the portal. There's no question. And again, it all comes down to though having that guy under center. Because as you know, Marler, if you got a quarterback, you got a chance. And South Carolina, I don't know if you saw the statistic, by the way. Connor is the one that tweeted it out, but South Carolina has never had an all SEC quarterback. I mean, that explains a lot, right? That explains a lot.
I mean, but I feel like that's I'm not surprised by that, I guess is the best way to say it. Because I mean, that's fair, but I'm just saying it explains a lot. Like you got to have that guy. They've also never recruited a guy that's been like Garcia was, I think,
like the chosen one.
Yeah, you've never brought in a guy in South Carolina that's like South Carolina has made a living off of white dudes that'll be invited back to alumni games and speaking events forever. I'm serious.
Why are you describing my guy Perry Orth so accurately?
Perry Orth, who he's like that name is like if khakis came to life. But Perry Orth, Connor Shaw, Dylan Thompson, and all good quarterbacks. But I mean, it's like they made a living off of you know what? There's a lot of talented guys out there, but fuck it. Let's just go out here and get
and that right there is the greatest opportunity this staff has and this program has with Spencer Rattler, because you know what? People ask me what's a successful year for him. Statistics, just get him drafted.
You haven't had a guy since the 80s.
If you go 8-4, he gets drafted first couple of rounds. You just mentioned it. You haven't had a quarterback drafted since 1989, which is an absurd stat in its own right. You get him drafted. All of a sudden, I think Shane Beamer and company are starting to change the narrative of that position. Because like you mentioned, I mean, you look at the top teams in the country, most of them have got a 5-star quarterback under center. Most of them do. They make it work.
The other part of it too is and going back to the stat, it's like, again, I don't know, and I don't even know that that's not the benchmark in my opinion, but it makes so much sense in terms of that's why fans are so excited about Luke Doty, right? That's why because you're talking about a fan base that has, I don't think that position has been a struggle until last year. It was awful. It was awful to watch. But that position as a whole, it's been very much hey, how about we get this every fucking stereotype at the NFL Combine you can throw out there, gritty, tough, game manager, all that kind of stuff. And they've been able to not only do well, but thrive, right? They've had really, really good careers there. So I think that, but it all starts with these guys, and you could be a guy that says 4 and 5 stars don't matter. Point to Stetson Bennett was a 2-star that was ranked the 104th quarterback in the country coming out of high school, and they just won a national championship. So That can happen. But you look at, I did a deep dive on this too. Like you look at every single team that's won a national championship in the last 15 years, only 4 of them had a 3-star or lower. Okay. And 3 of those 4 were Bama. It was like Jake Coker and McElroy and somebody else. But like, I think going forward, like, it's becoming more like the NFL where you have to have an elite guy at quarterback to kind of drive the offense and everything. All right. You brought him up and this is my biggest takeaway from the whole thing, because Kevin Harris is a guy that was like just a fantastic, I guess he was a bright spot in the 2020 season that was so tough to watch. Right. Marshawn Lloyd comes from my favorite state, just Delaware, just up there at the 312. You guys recruit the shit out of that state, man. I don't know what
we own Delaware for whatever reason. I don't know what it is
around Delaware. And ironically enough, my ex who went to Clemson, she's from there. So it's like, it's funny to watch you guys still put the fence up around that state as well. So no, but like him coming back and, he's a guy that goes into this season where he obviously coming off an injury, an ACL tear and all those things. And like I always say on every single episode, ACLs are important no matter what you hear on the internet. So Marshawn Lloyd, he looked to me like healthy. Like that was the first, like, I didn't want to go with explosive. I wanted to say healthy because he had one run in the first quarter where he just put his foot in the ground and made a cut into the second level. And he looked like that alone was good to see. Like it wasn't open field, but that was good alone. Like that alone was good to see. But then finishing the run and it's like the point of being like super physical out at the point of attack, like on the defensive back, I think they're trying to tackle him. That's what set up most of me. What do we expect from him? Because again, a lot of it has to do with that offensive line, man. Like, he's got a lot of talent. But do you think, especially with the addition of something like Rattler, that you're going to have defenses that aren't going to be able to stack the box and be back, more on their toes? Do you think that that's going to help or hurt going? Not hurt. Do you think it's going to help him going into the season, or we kind of just expect what we expect for the running backs with that offensive line?
Well, to your point, Marler, again, I know exactly which run you're talking about, by the way, where Marshawn Lloyd stuck his foot in the ground. And like you mentioned, I love the way he finished the run. And I think in times before, especially last year, and of course, again, he was coming off that injury. And I don't think we really gave enough credit to how tough it was going to be. I mean, again, that ACL, like you mentioned, it's pretty important. And the biggest hurdles mentally, getting back to yourself mentally. And you saw him later last year sort of start to get back to form. But I thought last year there was a little too much dancing. He kind of ran like he was still in high school in the sense of you could just tell he so badly wanted to make the home run play. And it's like, we just need you to be a productive running back.
Right.
And so to see him, stick his face in the fan, if you will, I can't believe I quoted that because that's a Muschamp saying, but to lower the shoulder and deliver the boom and say, you know what, I could try to go outside and break it, but you know what, I'm going to put my shoulder in this guy's chest and get 4 yards. And it's like, I want to see more of that from Marshawn Lloyd. Now, I don't want him to not be explosive, but sometimes you got to take what you can get. The other play that really stood out, I'm sure you remember this one, is, the play was going nowhere and he spins out of a tackle and, breaks and runs for about 10 yards or so. And I think that was sort of the explosiveness and elusiveness we all heard about. So, I mean, a lot of it, listen, is going to come down to the offensive line, but also, hey, I mean, there's going to be times they send more than you can block, and a running back, a good one, got to make a guy miss. That's just it, man. At some point at the second level, you got to make a guy miss. You got to outrun a guy. You got to use that elusiveness, that speed, what have you. So I'm really excited for Marshawn Lloyd. I mean, I'm excited for the running back room as a whole. I think, honestly, Marler, right now, I'd look at it and say, that might be the deepest position unit on this football team. I mean, you just look at the options they have with Marshawn Lloyd, Christian Beale Smith, Juju McDowell, Rashad Amos, DJ Twitty, Lavassier Carroll. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on of quality guys they have. And what's going to be a lot of fun is to go through summer and go through fall and watch those guys battle it out, because obviously you can't play 4 guys. I mean, you need to have, I think, a good 1-2 punch. And so whoever wins that job is going to earn it, because there's a lot of talent in there. But, selfishly, because I don't care who's scoring the touchdowns, as long as South Carolina is winning, doesn't matter to me. But selfishly, I'd love to see Marshawn Lloyd get back to his old self and be the lead back for South Carolina. Because if you talk to this kid, we were lucky enough to have him on the show right before he enrolled at South Carolina. He's just an awesome dude, man. Yeah. He loves being a Gamecock. He's a great kid. I mean, again, this is a guy that, from the state of Delaware, he could have went anywhere in the country and decided to come to Carolina. He could have
anywhere in Delaware, dude. Anywhere in Delaware.
Yeah. Such a huge state. Him and Braden Davis both. And after the Muschamp thing, he could have transferred anywhere, and instead he decided to stick it out at South Carolina. And, I'm wishing for the best things for him. And I think he will be a big part of our offense. I tend to favor Christian Beale Smith in that running back room right now, the transfer from Wake Forest. I just look at a guy that, again, led the Demon Deacons in rushing and led one of the best offenses in college football. He led that team in rushing. But again, you got so many good options, man. I mean, Juju McDowell, you got to get him the football because
he was
again,
so much
every
fun
time
late in the season, man.
Yeah, every time he touches, he's averaging 7-8 yards per carry.
Right.
I mean, you can't deny him the ball, but I don't think he's necessarily that RB1 bell cow running back going to tote it 20 to 25 times a game. But yeah, to a degree that, like you mentioned, I mean, it's going to come down to the offensive line. But again, having a Spencer Rattler, having at least a semblance of a threat of a passing game. I mean, that was the thing going into last year. And I know Marcus Satterfield was not great. And it's so easy to just blame the OC. And listen, I am not saying he had a good year, but I'm surprised that fans, I guess the expectations were, I was surprised what the expectations were, because my thoughts going into last season were the running game is our bread and butter. And if we can't run the football, we're going to struggle. And so when we couldn't run the ball, I mean, I just wasn't surprised how bad the offense looked. So, because your wide receiver room was so porous, and then it was a revolving door at quarterback. So now that you have Spencer Rattler, you feel like, you know what, you're going to have that true threat of that passing game. You're going to be able to go down the field. And that should definitely open things up in the run game and make those guys look a lot better up front. And hopefully it leads to a guy like Marshawn Lloyd having a really, really big year for South Carolina.
Yeah, I completely agree. You know, so we'll finish up here. I think that, like, we'll get into something this summer, obviously, like we did last year, and kind of preview the season and all that kind of stuff, and going into the year. I don't want to talk about the defense because I just don't really. It's like spring games. That's one of the things.
There's nothing in a spring game you can really take away from it.
Right.
From the defense. And I mean, it's so funny, man. I actually have one of the. I won't say him specifically by name, but one of the guys on the defensive staff for South Carolina right now, and a pretty notable one, tell me he's like, Chris, I hate spring games. Yeah. I just hate them because they're just so limited, and they can't really do what they want to do. Right. I will say Terrell Dawkins did flash the NC State transfer, and there were some other guys here and there, but yeah, it's really hard to draw any sort of conclusions from the spring game. So.
Well, you're hoping a guy like Zach Pickens finally kind of sees a light and becomes like the 5-star we all thought he was gonna be when he signed on, and he's talking about Birch as well. But you're right. Like it's one of those things. Like I started going into the notes, and you know how I get. Like I'll just start there's pages and pages of these notes, and I started getting the defense after like pages on the offense. I was like, Jesus, like honestly, and you can blame Alabama for this, and not because I was trying to be a homer, but because of the fact that after watching that spring game with 15 sacks, I was like, you know what? It's like, because you could look at it like, man, this defense is gonna be great, or you're like, Jesus, this offensive line is garbage. So we'll get more into the defense. We got a long offseason ahead of us, but the last thing I want to talk about is the fact that one. Steve, I just realized when you said since 1989, the quarterback, that means Steve Taneyhill didn't get drafted, which is horseshit. Nope. But the other part of it too is like, he should have got drafted on hair alone. But going into year 2 with this, right? The season, like you brought up this earlier, you started talking about the offensive lines. They play Georgia every year, right? You're not going to get away from that. You're not going to get away from playing at Clemson. You have to go on the road to Clemson this year. I think y'all get Georgia on the road too, right?
No, Georgia's at home. So it's the schedule starts out Georgia State at home, at Arkansas week 2, and then Georgia at home week 3.
So I guess the question is this, because like I have been admittedly hesitant to like get too on board. Like I'm on board with Shane Beamer and I, like forever. Right. I love that dude. He's such a good dude. I hope him nothing but success. At the same time, when you start looking at that schedule, and you said this, like they were very fortunate to be in a bowl game last year, and they capitalized on it, which is a credit to them. But they probably shouldn't have lost or probably shouldn't have beat Auburn. There's a couple other games that they kind of came back. Looking at this season, and please God don't say it's Kentucky, and please God don't say it's A&M. What? Looking ahead right now, which game do you feel like is like a must win? Because that week 2 at Arkansas has big must win vibes, even though it's early in the season.
So don't say Kentucky.
I'm gonna
that's just like the ace in the hole for every. All right, so if it's not Kentucky, you know what? I'll actually say this though, because here's the hot take: it isn't Kentucky, and I don't know if you saw this. I got on this weird kick where I gave Kentucky football an insane amount of credit on our daily live show, and fans were like, "Chris, we don't want to hear." We were just starting to talk SEC football, and the point I was trying to make was I think it's time that South Carolina fans do, and I hate to say this, but change the way they view that game. Because, I mean, Kentucky has you have to give them credit at some point. Like, their over-under's 8. Like, they've built the program up to where South Carolina is going to be an underdog. So I'll tell you this, because everybody wants to beat Georgia. Everybody wants to beat Texas A&M. Everybody obviously wants to beat Clemson. I'll tell you this. I think Arkansas is the biggest swing game of the year. I don't think it's the must win. I think it's that game, though. Yeah. If you lose it, it's not going to derail your season. Arkansas is going to be favored. But if you win it, it just opens up a whole new door of possibilities. You'll be 2-0. I'd be willing to bet you College Game Day comes to Columbia for South Carolina, Georgia, or at least you'll have a chance. You know, you might get SEC Nation or whatever. It'll be a primetime night game match, whatever. Call me crazy. Fans are probably going to be like, what are you talking about? I think the must-win game, if you're telling me like a game we can't lose and have a good year, Missouri at home. You just have to get back to beating teams like that every year. You just have to. And so we have no problems beating Vandy. So they're out. What other game on the schedule? Hey, we lost to Kentucky last year and went 6-6. So if you lose to Kentucky, it's going to sting. It's going to hurt. I mean, South Carolina, that is the one game you can get away with a lot of things being the head football coach at University of South Carolina. You cannot get away with losing to Kentucky on an annual basis. So, hey, I don't disagree with anybody that we need to win that game. But South Carolina hasn't won there in Lexington since 2012. And even when we have won, even our greatest teams, for whatever reason, we have struggled there. I don't know what it is.
They're a better program. That's why.
I've never been to Kroger Field. I don't know if it's a great home field atmosphere or what's going on. But even when we were great, we struggled there. But I look at a game like Mizzou. It's just, if you lose to Mizzou at home, how can you say you had a good year? You know what I mean? Right. So, I'll go with that one. I think most fans are going to go with Kentucky. I think Kentucky's going to be looked at as the game. Like, you know, you need to get back to beating the Cats. But I would agree that, you know, forget the Georgias and the Clemsons and the A&Ms. Mm-hmm. For South Carolina to take the next step and go from just like a fringe 6-win program to an annually 8 to 9 win a year program, which I think is realistic. Yeah. You got to beat the Kentuckys and the Missouris of the world every year, or at least more often than they beat you. I think you need to beat them over the course of a decade 70% of the time.
And maybe that's get into one of these stretches they're in right now. You know,
no, you can't lose 7 of 8. So, you know, again, most will say Kentucky, but if I can't say that, I'll say the Missouri game at home, because again, it's just, I look at like SEC hierarchy and SEC East hierarchy, and you know, you lose to Mizzou. It's like, are you really going to let Mizzou pass you as a program? You know, unfortunately, you kind of feel like Tennessee's already made that leapfrog.
I was going to ask,
what they're doing with Heupel. And I mean, obviously, that's another huge game for South Carolina. But and then Florida, who knows what the hell's going on with Florida? But I would look at just, again, if we're talking must win in the sense of like South Carolina's just, in my opinion, got to. If you're going to get to 7+ wins, you got to win that game. You got to beat Missouri, man. At home. Yeah. I mean, it was inexcusable to lose to them last year. I mean, really, it truly was. They had the worst run defense in the history of college football, it felt like, and you ran for 50 yards. I mean, it just none of that game made any sense. So I think beating Mizzou at home, I think that's the must win. I think biggest swing game, though, it's definitely that week 2 game at Arkansas. Because like I said, if you lose, whatever, but if you win that game, who knows, man? Momentum's a fickle mistress. And I mean, Georgia's certainly going to be a favorite over you, but I mean, Willie B will be frenzied if you found a way to beat Arkansas and go in that game 2-0.
You know what? My prayer for you guys is this. Has nothing to do with even beating Arkansas for your own benefit in the season. It has everything to do with the fact that I hope you guys beat them so you guys don't have to go fucking sit out there at 12 o'clock noon for an ESPN game the next week when they play Georgia, because they absolutely will make you do that. And it will be hot as shit, and you'll be the beer tomato all over again. So
hot as shit. No, we'll make sure to find some seats and some shade. I can tell you that right now.
Good. Well, I'm happy all of it's going well, man, because it's been fun. I'll tell you what, last thing I'll say too is, because you were there, and I probably should have opened with this, but like one of the things I've never seen South Carolina do is undersell themselves, and they said there were 20,000 fans at the stadium. Realistically, how many fans? Because I know, Coach, you're going to build that up, and Beamer was really big on that. Side note: the one thing I did not like Beamer that he did. It's the first thing I've ever disagreed or kind of cringed at that he was doing. That shit with the special teams in the middle of the game. And then I don't know if you saw the broadcast, he did a live read about what the team names were. And I was like, he was like, the Showstoppers. I was like, I feel like I'm watching a fucking step competition, like on up to the streets or something. But no, like how many people were there, and for real, like genuinely, what was like the attitude or mood going in?
Well, I mean, I think the atmosphere was electric, number one. I mean, the Gamecock walk, it felt like, you know, it's funny. And I don't know if this is an insult to the game last year, if it's a compliment to the spring game. I think it's a compliment to the spring game, but it really felt like Troy game vibes from last year, because that one was a very lightly attended non-conference game. But I was like, this feels like the Troy game, like weather, everything just sort of felt parallel.
Right.
But yeah, that attendance number that was released, I don't know who released it. And I'll tell you this though, Marler, I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter, like this, the madness, the arguing over all that if an alien landed on planet Earth and they wanted to understand like just how passionate are college football fans, just how passionate are South Carolina fans, I'll be like, let me show you this saga of people arguing about attendance over a game that does not even count. Like, you know what I mean? Like that perfectly encapsulates how fanatical we really are, right? But realistically, I mean, I don't think South Carolina broke the record, which going in was 38,000. I don't think they did that, but 20,000 was just such a disrespectfully low ball number. I think it was right at about 30, maybe 29, 30, 31 maybe, but 20,000. I don't know where they got the 20,000 number from. You know, here's the thing, Marler. Like, Clemson had their spring game the weekend prior, and they put out what their attendance was 35,000. Nobody is going to bat an eye and second guess your spring game attendance. If you're South Carolina, why not just be funny and put out 35,001?
Thank you.
Who cares? Like, why do we have to like? Why not? You know, like at least give us that. Why would your own school, your own university, lowball you on attendance? Like that, because it was. It's like on no planet was it only 20,000. Like on no planet. So I don't know, man. I said that going into the game. I was like, dude, no matter what the attendance is, we should just literally make it 35,001 just to troll them. That'd be hilarious.
And also that would have done so much continuing the momentum, to be honest. Because they would have been like it would have been all over the news and it widely covered. That would have been really funny.
Yeah, and we do. Our football account should have just like kept pumping it up, like, you know, like that would have been funny. Like somebody in that building, come on, like I don't know, man.
Do better for sure.
Be better.
No, that's
better.
That's funny. Well,
but it was definitely more than 20,000. I will go on record and say it was definitely more than that number.
Well, you know, it's funny too. Is I thought when you said the 20,000, I was like, my only thing my mind kept going to is like, maybe they were trying to do like something like it's like 2001, right? Like, so it's like playing on the tradition of like playing 2001 before they come out in the tunnel. But your idea is a lot better. Before we go, and I'm sure that you are familiar with the same person, I got to give a huge shout out to my favorite South Carolina fan, besides you, obviously, Laura Doyle, because she just consumes all of the South Carolina content, and I know she's excited for the season as well. So the rest of you South Carolina fans, I'm not going to say you by name. There you go. Do better online as well. But tell everyone where they can find you on social media. I know we plugged it a little bit, but if you got anything else coming up, let them know as well.
Yeah, for sure. So we're all over social media at the Spurs Up Show, exactly as it sounds, at the Spurs Up Show, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube. I mean, anywhere you can go, you'll find us. It's also thespursupshow.com. Of course, we drop a podcast Monday, Wednesday, Friday on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. And I do a daily live show called The Daily Crow, taking questions, comments, calls. Sort of think of Feinbaum, but South Carolina version. And we have the callers. The callers are the stars of the show. I mean, it really feels like the South Carolina version of Paul Feinbaum. That airs Monday through Friday, noon to 2. And that's on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch. So, and then of course we have content all between that. It's a good time. So at the Spurs Up Show, though, wherever you go, that's where you can find us.
All right, dude. Well, we appreciate it as always. I'm gonna let you get out of here, get some dinner, and we'll have it up here soon. But yeah, we'll talk to you soon, man.
Chris, I appreciate you, man. Always a pleasure.